I can get the talent I need without having to worry about kind of who's able to come into the office and who's here locally. And it's really a skill that I think managers need to be able to have, and HR
Mhm.
leaders and business leaders need to have the skill to be able to find talent anywhere that it exists and attract it. The other thing that we did is um, loosened up our requirements in terms of full-time employment. So it turns out that there are a lot of really well qualified professionals that, for whatever reason, have other commitments in their lives that mean that they have had to face a very hard choice about stepping away from a full time role.
Let's learn how our next guest gets up, dress up, and show up on purpose. Enjoy the episode. Hello, morning enthusiasts. Welcome to the Best Morning Routine Ever podcast. I am your host, Dr. Lunid, and today I have the honor of introducing a very special guest to the show, Cary Sparrow. Cary helps HR professionals and consulting firms predict the future of pay. He is a former U.S. Navy officer who served on several nuclear submarines. He 35 plus years combined of engineering, military consulting, technology, operation leadership. So Cary knows his stuff. Let's just say that, right? He is the founder of WageScape, that shows you what's happening with wages right now in any industry, any job, any location. It's actually a pretty phenomenal idea. So this helps attract talent, retain talent, and how to well compensate them, honestly, because that is a motive a lot of the time. So I'm excited to connect with Cary. So with no further ado, Cary, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you very much. I appreciate you having me.
Of course, it's my pleasure. So I'm curious to see where the gap was, where you saw the gap and then decided to fill a niche, right? So let's talk about your journey to WageScape and how you came about.
Right, right. Admittedly, it's very geeky. As you mentioned, I was in consulting. I also was in corporate IT and corporate HR, helping big organizations set up all the things they need to manage their workforce. And one of the things that was really apparent when you kind of get into the guts of things is that the state of data about what's going on with workforce, what's going on with pay, what's going on with skills is really, really bad. It was I founded WageScape in 2015. It was before then. It still hasn't improved very much.
Hmm.
Um, and as I started to understand why it was so bad, I realized that there was a lot better way to things could be done. And I saw the impact of not having good information about what's going on in the labor market, what's going on with
Yeah.
hiring, skills, pay, who's doing it and what do they want, how successful they are. And I saw ways to get that information and make them available. So that's why I founded WageScape. And um, it was interesting because I was in a corporate executive position then, and we worked with lots of big technology firms and lots of big consulting firms. And I was saying, hey, there's a better way to do this. And as soon as you do, um, you're going to be able to give your clients insights they've never had before, insights on like where there are skills
Mhm.
that are really valuable that companies need and where those people exist, or what's actually happening, how to make sure that pay for a marketing manager in Memphis, Tennessee is exactly where it should be, and not just using pay for all marketing managers,
Yeah.
around the country based on data that is reflecting decisions made over a year ago. And when you do that, all kinds of new possibilities open up, all kinds of innovation, things that people didn't even realize were possible before, because you're making the market much more transparent and you're providing much higher quality information to them. So, what do you guys, speaking to these technology companies and these consulting firms, you have to see the same thing. So, what do you have coming down the road for us that we, as your client, could really benefit from knowing about? And every single time, after about 30 seconds of starting this conversation, they started looking at me like I had horns growing out of my head. They had no idea what I was talking about. But if you think about it, anytime you introduce something brand new, uh, like nobody would have envisioned what we could be doing with smartphones before the first smartphone was introduced, right? But as
Yep.
soon as it was, amazing innovations opened up. And anytime you make information available about a massive market, massive innovations open up from it. And we had the same potential there, but nobody else was seeing it. And that's what convinced me to jump off and form WageScape. And
Yeah.
that's been an interesting journey in its own right. But here we are now, 8 years later. We got some pretty impressive clients, and we've got a good up and to the right trajectory. So I think the world's catching on.
Yeah, it's great insight to have. The example you gave with, somebody working in Indiana, that manager, that rate is going to be very different for someone living in California, right? Cost of
Yeah.
living is higher, so you really have to account for these
Mhm.
things. And Glassdoor does not do it with that limited data, and so that's kind of unique, especially with remote work these days.
Yep. There's all kinds of, the pandemic really disrupted the labor market. It disrupted every part of our lives,
Hmm.
but the labor market was really disrupted, and the effects of it are going to last with us for a long time. There's not going to be a going back to the way things were. There's a new standard around remote work. There's a new standard around the kinds of skills that people need. Supply chains have reorganized themselves in new ways.
Yeah.
There's all kinds of new things, new expectations from employees. All of that means that companies need really good intelligence about what's happening, about what they should be hiring for, how much they should be paying, where they could be going to find the talent that they need.
Yeah.
And a lot of companies are not set up to bring in that kind of intelligence and factor it into their decision making. And that's what we do. We help them with that.
Yeah. And so hiring and compensation looks different now, right? Because the revolution where we now have hybrid work for people who don't fully want to go back in, they're saving on traffic. They rather be home and be able to pick up their kids. Now, what does compensation look like for a lot of the companies that has to entail more of these, I don't know, non-monetary,
Mhm.
yeah, incentives?
Yep. Over the last couple of years, a couple of things, really stark have been happening. The first is that companies are realizing that they have to compete based on pay. And so starting in 2021, second half of 2021, going all the way through right now, advertised wages, which we track on a daily basis all over the country from millions of different, web pages, advertised wages for all jobs or across all jobs have been going up an average of 20% a year, 20% a year.
Mm,
It's huge. Now, that's not what actual pay is doing for all jobs, because people that already have jobs in companies are not seeing their pay go up 20% a year. But in
right.
order to compete, to get the talent they need, companies have had to raise their prices, which also means that now you've got a big retention risk, because all of your employees are the targets for everyone else's recruiting efforts. And the conventional wisdom has been that that people don't leave for more money; they leave because they've got bad managers or bad cultures. It's those kinds of factors, but that's not true anymore. If somebody gets offered a 50% raise, they will, in a lot of cases, take it,
Mhm.
because that is a meaningful impact, especially in this environment where you've got inflation's at a historically high level, or it has been. It's coming down a bit now, but that's one of the things that's changed. A result of that also, though, is that a lot of companies are realizing that they can't afford to raise their wages that fast, and they can't afford to even offer it. And
Mhm.
so what we've seen is that companies have really leaned into advertising and marketing of their benefits programs and their work style programs
Yeah.
and things that are not related to pay so much, but could be benefits, education benefits. If you go online, you'll see a number of companies are advertising that they'll pay for your education,
Mhm.
or if you see ads on video. So what we saw is, interesting enough, we track which benefits companies are offering in their job ads. And prior to the pandemic, benefits were mentioned less than 5% of the time. And then starting again late 2021, it almost instantly went up to about 20% of job ads are advertising and marketing their benefits. So companies have realized that they've got to do more than just, pay, and that they
Pay
have more
you.
to offer, as well.
So
Remote
what's
work
a
is
company to do, especially small ones? What's a company to do in this time and era?
You've got to get really innovative. I mean, we're a small company, and I'll tell you a couple of things that we did. One is I set the company up entirely virtual to start with. So
Mm-hmm.
before people even heard of remote work or were talking about it, I set the company up where we were not going to have offices and the team was going to work virtually. So as a result, I've had employees in 9 countries. Um,
Mm-hmm.
there's no 2 employees that are located in the same cities. Uh, we don't have office space that we use.
Yeah.
And as a result of being able to do that and do it pretty well, because I've been managing global teams for a long time, but um, I can get the talent I need without having to worry about kind of who's able to come into the office and who's here locally. And it's really a skill that I think managers need to be able to have, and
Mm-hmm.
HR leaders and business leaders need to have the skill to be able to find talent anywhere that it exists and attract it. The other thing that we did is um, loosened up our requirements in terms of full-time employment. So it turns out that there are a lot of really well qualified professionals that, for whatever reason, have other commitments in their lives that mean that they have had to face a very hard choice about stepping away from a full-time role in
Mm-hmm.
order to take care of parents, or stay at home with kids, or pursue an education, or any number of other things that mean that they can't fulfill a typical expected full-time commitment, which
Yeah.
is what almost every company is built around. And we threw that out the window and said, we don't care where you work, and we don't care. We want to know how many hours you're working, but we'll structure the job around you,
Right.
so that and so we've got people that are amazingly well qualified that are working for us that we're not going to be able to fit into the requirements that most companies imposed on them. And as a result, we're able to offer a much better, career proposition for them.
Yeah.
They're able to keep their careers moving at the same pace. I mean, they're doing amazingly interesting work. They're being challenged. They're taking on more and more responsibility, but they're doing it within the confines of what they have available. And we fully embrace that. And so
That
that's one example. And there's
Mhm.
lots of others when you look across other companies that are being innovative, where companies have to think differently about what their workforce looks like. It's interesting because every time, a business mogul gets on and talks about how employees have to come back in the office, I frankly have to laugh at that, because there's so many companies that have gone in exactly the opposite direction since 2020. Think about how many hundreds of thousands, or maybe even millions in the US alone, small businesses have started where the starting expectation is that you're going to work remotely. Entire companies have shifted in that direction. And I don't think you know, that horse is going back in that barn. I think that, uh, you know, anyone who says to their employees that you're going to have to start adding in commute time to your day every day, you're going to have to start with much more rigorous childcare arrangements than you're used to. You're going to have to start with, your wardrobe being at a different level and more expensive than what you're used to. Anyone who that is part of their proposition is going to, I think, have a really tough time competing against the rest of us who are saying we don't care about any of that. So, um,
Not anymore. Yeah, especially if
new,
you could be
a
an
new normal.
influencer. You could be a YouTube
That's
influencer. There's more work digital wise too.
yeah,
More
yeah,
opportunities that came out of that ruffled
yep.
2020.
I mean, I think that there's a lot of disruption going on. I do think it's a real concern to say, how do we keep a company culture that is a differentiator for us in an environment where not everybody is together all the time? I think that's and just because that's a challenge doesn't mean that it's a problem that can't be solved. I think there's any number of companies that have really leaned into that challenge and are finding ways to make it work.
Yeah,
So,
and also generational, right? I'm a millennial, and any generation after me, they're more tech savvy. They really don't. They're not signing up for the 40 hours, 40 years, 9 to 5 anymore. So that's a real challenge for a lot of organizations, especially those that are considered themselves dinosaurs, that have been doing it this the same way for so long. What do they do? Now
Right.
there's a new generation coming in. And like what?
Well, I mean, the good news is we're kind of 3 years into this process now. But most established companies don't have the decision making structure in place to innovate like what we're talking about.
Yeah.
And the good news is that there's examples that they've all lived to say, hey, this is possible. Before, nobody thought remote work was possible. Remote work was being included in jobs in less than 5% of the cases prior to 2020. It was really around 2% of the cases, and it fluctuated a lot. It was at a high of about 80%. A little over a year ago, and now it's about a third. So it's fluctuating still, but it's not 2%, and it's never going to go back to that level. So
that ship has sailed.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Tell us about universities. You work. That's a big niche for you. You work with a lot of universities. What? Tell us why, and maybe what makes them different.
Yeah, so we sponsor research and instruction with our data set. And in order to explain this, let me talk a little bit about our data platform. This
Yeah.
is our core asset, our core product is data about all the jobs that are being hired, what they're looking at, how much they're going to be paid, who's hiring for them, how easy or hard is it for the jobs to be filled. And that's a data set that tracks in the US, for example, it tracks data from about 55 countries, but in the US, we get data on about 85% of all the new jobs that are created.
Wow.
So
Okay.
a massive look at the whole economy, updated every day. And so that's a really rich data set to do research on all kinds of things that relate to work and pay. So we've had universities, and if you go out to our website, you can see a number of them. But leading universities and literally several dozen that use our data for research around what is the future for IT jobs, which skills are in demand and are most lucrative that we should be guiding our students towards, and which ones are becoming, less lucrative, which combinations of skills are more important. Should we be teaching management skills or just technical skills? Those sorts of things where having data that's right at the forefront of what people are hiring for is really valuable to those. I mean, there was another example where 2 years ago, we were working with a really premier university that wanted to understand the implications of ChatGPT. Now, we had never heard of ChatGPT. When their lead researcher came and was talking with me, they're like, "Yeah, have you heard of GPT? I want to look at which roles in companies are going to be most disrupted by this technology." And I said, "You got to take a step back. What are you talking about?" And so it was really prescient. And they went in and they used our data to be able to figure out what proportion of every job was related to creative communications, creative writing, and so forth. And then they were able to model out how significantly would entire professions or industries or organizations be impacted by the introduction of large language models and generative AI. And then, here about a little over a year later, ChatGPT hits the scene
everywhere.
And these guys were, they looked like they, were seeing the future back then, and they were really. But that's the kind of thing that our data can do. We also support instruction of graduate level and undergraduate data science programs. So the folks that are learning all the really high-tech techniques around being able to analyze data and extract kind of the maximum insight from it are using our data because it's such a large and robust data platform to work off of. And so we're happy to work with universities to support those goals, because every one of their students is a potential client of ours, in the future, and is also, a passive marketer of what we can do. And,
I can see the connection with business intelligence and big data, working on Tableau and pulling in these queries, just kind of to visualize the data. essentially. I can see the connection there. And for universities, the other piece is it helps them to design, as you said, the curriculum. You put the two together, and I was like, aha, yeah, that makes sense. But
Yep.
to develop curriculums around competency based
Yeah.
programs, so because people don't have to sit, especially if you're already working and you just want to brush up on some skills, you just kind of pay for that, and it's tailored,
Yep.
specific to your current job.
Yep.
Win-win.
Well, and if you think about it, there's a lot of people that, I mean, over the last couple of years, it's really shown there's a lot of people that are realizing that they have interests that with just a little bit more skill, they can take their career in an entirely new direction. I have a number of friends and acquaintances of mine that started off in careers that were completely different from data science, but they always loved data analysis. And
Yeah.
with a little bit of formal training, they were able to connect those dots. Now, what universities have available to them is the ability to match up interest with a very specific action plan that will allow people to guide their careers towards that interest. And there's an environment right now, given the shortage of labor in so many places, those opportunities are better than they ever have been in our lifetimes.
Yeah, it's good to see the
Yeah.
improvement, for sure. Cary, tell us about your morning routine. How do you get up, dress up, and show up?
So my morning routine starts the night before by understanding what I got to do the next day and making sure that I get enough sleep in order to
Execute.
wake up pretty rested. Um, when I'm up, there's a saying somewhere, eat a frog for breakfast. I believe
Yeah, it's
that.
a
I
whole
don't know if
book.
you, yeah. So I take that to heart. I do, one very distasteful or difficult thing before I even, start the rest of my day to just get that off my plate. Because otherwise I could sit there and do all the easy stuff and just,
Yeah.
waste the time.
Is the difficult stuff, is it physical or always work related? Because some people work out, plunge themselves in a cold water.
Yeah, that's a great question. No, for me, the working out is fun. And so I try and do that in the morning. But before I go to work out, I try to make one tough decision or one uncomfortable decision or do one, tedious task, or, one set of communications that I really haven't been, looking forward to and just get it done. And that way I kind of move past that. Right.
Yeah.
So there's lots of reasons to do it, but
Yeah,
those are
I agree.
really the things. Start with, it starts the night before, you know, get productive really fast and take on something that, isn't necessarily the most pleasant, and then get some exercise in, is
Nice.
kind of
Yeah.
how I
Well
approach it.
put. The piece about eating your frog first is, well, in the morning you're really fresh. Your
Yeah.
willpower is at the strongest. You have the brain work, like everything's working in alignment. It'd be
Yeah.
best. That big task would have been daunting midday, end of the day. It's a lot easier because you are all there.
Right. You're exactly right. I mean, by the middle of the afternoon, I mean, that's the other side of this. By the middle of the afternoon, I very deliberately shift what I focus on. I change my schedule to recognize that, after about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I'm good for tasks that have a very narrow scope of what I have to pay attention to. Right. And
Yeah.
so, um, because you're right. I mean, a lot of your executive function kind of goes down over the course of the day, and it's best first thing in the morning. So,
Yeah, decision fatigue is real. Okay. If you
yeah,
have to decide what to wear, what workout to do, what music to listen to, and you haven't even left the house. So
right.
imagine being at the office, entering email, talking to this person, and doing the operational piece. Decision fatigue will hit you like a brick.
Yep.
Okay, by lunchtime.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Absolutely right.
That's why Steve Jobs and Mark Zuckerberg, they wear the same shirt every day, trying to just eliminate some of that, save it for bigger thinking, bigger frogs
Yep.
that are worth it, towards the day. Cary, tell us, how can we connect with you? Where can we find you?
Absolutely. You can find me online. Our website is www.wagescape.com, and you can reach us through that. You can reach me on LinkedIn. My profile is Cary Sparrow. You can find me pretty easily there. And, that's the easiest way to get in touch with us.
Perfect, Cary. It's been nice. It was nice having you on. We love quotes, and your favorite saying here at BMR. Do you have one you want to leave us with?
One of my favorite sayings is the best adventures in life aren't always fun when they're happening. And I would say that's been true, absolutely true for me, is that if you want to explore, new and exciting things and get to new and exciting places, sometimes it can be a little uncomfortable getting there. And in retrospect, it's always worth it.
It's like entrepreneurship, like starting your own business.
We could spend a lot of time talking about the entrepreneur's journey, and but you want to talk about a roller coaster. Every day is like multiple rides on the roller coaster. So
Right. And I love that. I love that saying, the adventure. It doesn't have to be fun the whole way through, but it is about the journey and experiencing all that.
yeah,
Thank you so much for sharing, Cary. It's been such a pleasure having you on.
thank you very much, Dr. Lunid. I appreciate it.
Perfect. Hope you enjoyed today's episode. Please comment and tell us what was your favorite part, your favorite habit that you are going to try out for yourself today. Comment below. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe. Until next time, I will see you at the top of your best morning routine ever. Stay blessed.